Hello, this is an olive tree, and if you watch my videos you'll know that I enjoy my olive trees very much indeed, and I've done quite a few videos about olive trees at my home in Cheshire. And here are a few of the thumbnail pictures for one or two of the olive tree videos on my channel, from top 10 tips to winter care, and I will link these videos at the end of this one just in case you are interested. Currently I'm in Walthamstow. This olive tree belongs to a friend of mine, Christian, who's actually Italian, and he tells me that in Italy these are all over the place and they're always covered in fruit. And the question arose, how do you get an olive tree to produce fruit in the UK? Well, it's possible and it's not that difficult, but there are some steps that you can take. So in this video I'm going to share with you my 10-point plan on how to get an olive tree to produce fruit. And if you follow these 10 points, which I will type up in the description box below this video, you stand a very good chance of getting fruit on your olive tree. So let's get started with these 10 points. Now, the first point is olive trees need to go through a cold period of around 2 months below 10 degrees centigrade, with a variation and fluctuation of temperatures between day and night, in order for them to start producing flowers, because that low temperature will trigger a process called anthesis, and anthesis is the budding and the blossoming of the plant. That's triggered by those 2 months of cold temperatures below 10 degrees centigrade. So if you take your olive trees indoors in the winter, you're reducing the chances of it producing fruit. So that's point one. Point two, olives produce fruit on 1-year-old wood or 1-year-old branches. If you heavily prune your olive every year, the chances are you're removing the chance for it to fruit, because you're removing the 1-year-old wood where those buds will form, having gone through anthesis. So don't prune it too heavily, and what you might want to do is prune it selectively. Maybe prune half the branches one year and half the branches the next year. Point number three, talking of pruning, it will only produce flowers and therefore olives where there is light. So in order to have an olive that produces lots of olives, you need to prune it into an open goblet shape, which is a bit like my hand here. That allows light into all parts of the plant. If you have a very dense, round clipped bush, light can't penetrate and it will produce fewer fruits. The next point is those branches that do eventually produce fruits, they may produce too many fruits, and you may have heard of this thing called June drop, which is where a lot of our fruit trees in the UK drop their fruits. If it's got too many fruits for the plant to sustain, it will drop them. So you might need to selectively prune out and thin out some of your fruits, and they say a rule of thumb is have 3 or 4 fruits per 30 centimeters of branch. So there we go, thin out your fruits. Now, in order to produce fruits, this plant will also need feed. So start the year in February with a high nitrogen feed at the base of the plant, and that will stimulate it into producing the growth it needs to produce the fruit. And then it needs continuous feeding throughout the growing season. If you don't feed it, it won't have the nutrients to feed the fruits. And those fruits take a lot of energy and a lot of nutrition, particularly when it's in a pot like this one is. They don't just need feed or food, however, they also need water. And in the growing season, once it's been pollinated and it's producing fruit, it needs plenty of water, because that water and that nutrition will help those fruits to swell. If they're not getting enough water and nutrition, they may drop. So how do you water a fruiting olive? Well, it mustn't ever sit in water, and the roots must never be waterlogged. The roots need oxygen, but they do need to be watered. So what you should do is you should almost let them dry out in between watering, and then flood them. Just to the point where they've got no water left, flood them. In the summertime, that's probably 2 or 3 times a week. But give them a good flooding, and that's another benefit of leaving a space at the top of the pot. And that will allow you to really flood it without the water running off the top. So we've covered a lot of the aspects already of how to get your olive tree to produce fruit. But there's one important point that we've not covered. In order to produce fruit, the flowers it produces, when eventually you do get it to produce flowers, have to be pollinated. Now this plant is pollinated by wind. So it needs to be positioned where there is a breeze, which will carry the pollen from one flower into another, and that will pollinate each of those flowers, and the pollinated flowers will then die back and turn into olives. But if you don't position it where there is a breeze, how can the pollen get from one flower to another? So it needs a light breeze just to carry that pollen around the plant. Now, it has been said, and I think it is the case, that some of these plants, whilst they are self-fertile and will pollinate themselves, you can assist them by putting a cross-pollinating plant near it. And you do that with fruit trees. I don't know if you ever knew that a lot of fruit trees are not self-fertile, so you plant crab apples near them, for example. I'm not saying crab apples are the right plant for this olive. I'll put a link to the correct cross-pollinator in the description box below this video. This is Europa olive, by the way. So, wind pollination, they need a breeze, and you can help them by having a cross-pollinator nearby. So there we go. There is my 10-point plan for getting your olive tree to fruit, and I will type all those in the description box below this video so that you can copy and paste them, print them off and use them. And if you use them, there's a very high degree of probability that you'll get nice olives on your olive tree. Then you'll have to think about what to do with those olives, because the next step is brining them so that they can be edible. But that's not for this video. Hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful. It feels like there's more to it than meets the eye, but it's actually 10 very basic steps. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon for some more olive tree fruiting adventures. Bye for now.